Hi, welcome to Triggered Care. I am Alex. Today I'm just going to be doing some story times, all related to childhood heroes, or, like people who helped me out a lot during my childhood, because it's not all sad stories. There's a lot of good people that I have had in my life. So, I wanted to make a video about them. Let's get into it. The biggest positive influence on my life as a whole, even, would be my grandmother. And that's on my mother's side, so my mother's mother. My grandmother was a school psychologist with a master's degree and a specialty in, child psychology. She recognized pretty early on that my mother wasn't the best caretaker, or mother for that matter. We lived in a different state up until I was about 5, and then we moved into the same state as my grandmother. But when that happened, my mother filed a restraining order against my grandmother because she had been talking to lawyers in the CPS about symptoms and signs that she was noticing of physical abuse and sexual abuse in my case. This did not make my mother happy. My grandmother also called the school that we went to check up on us when my mother started ghosting her calls and not responding to her. And so my mother got a restraining order against her. And they went to court for it and everything. I actually had a chance to read through the court transcripts, which were just ridiculous. Just straight up ridiculous. My stepfather was convinced that the restraining order was because my grandparents gave us too much soda. And, my mother went on about how she's terrified of her parents, and it was just a huge mess. So she files a restraining order, and for about 1.5 to 2 years, we don't see Grandma and Grandpa. And the thing is that I don't have many memories from that time. There were times that my sister would sneak calls to my grandmother, and apparently I would talk to her on the phone too, but I don't even remember that. It's like a big black hole in my memory almost during that time. And then after, 1.5 to 2 years, my mother dropped the restraining order and allowed my grandmother to see us again and talk to us again. I think part of that was just Grandma was free childcare. Like, she could drop us off at her house for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and not worry about it. And I think she very much missed having that during the time of no contact. And I think that's ultimately what drove her back to reconnect with her mother. And also my grandmother, she spent so much money on lawyers and so much time talking to Child Protective Services, but there was legally nothing that she could do. So she had to make nice with my ma in order to see us, and she did. What I remember about her was she was always concerned about my feelings. She constantly wanted to know how I was doing. If we went to the store, me, her, and my sisters always picked out toys right away, but I was always kind of standoffish. And she would make me pick out a toy before she would tell everybody we're not leaving until Alex finds something that she likes. And it's okay if it takes a long time, because sometimes people take a while to choose. Like, she was very understanding and very empathetic. She loved laughing and she loved socializing. She was the type of lady that could go out to the store and have 15 different conversations with people and have the people just love her and keep talking to her and telling her their life secrets pretty much, because she just had such a happy, open energy about her. She read books to me, which I didn't get a lot of that anywhere else, and that really, she formed a maternal bond with me. I think that really helped me survive all the stuff that I had to put up with at home. And I think I would be a lot worse off, like a lot worse off, if even still alive, if it hadn't been for her. When I got older in college, she financially supported me whatever way she could. Sometimes she would randomly pay off a bill that I had. I was always super grateful, and she was such a supportive person. She's honestly the biggest inspiration I have for how I live today, and sort of what my goals have become is to be half of the friendly, nice person that she was, and to help like she did. When I was in either late middle school or early high school was the first time that she got cancer, and she got breast cancer, and then while going through chemo for the breast cancer, she got skin cancer. But through radiation and chemo and all of that stuff, she went into remission and went on pretty well for a while after that. About, I don't even know how many years later, 5 years later it must have been, because I was in college, or it was I was right after my first year of college. During the summer, she was having some hip problems, which she just attributed to old age. And also, she is so stubborn. She's stubborn as a bull, and she does not like going to the doctors. So she was having this hip problem that she was ignoring until the day that she couldn't walk across the yard. And then we had to take her into the emergency room, where they did x-rays and found tumors all along her spine. The breast cancer that went into remission apparently metastasized to her spine. So, like I said, that was the summer between my freshman and sophomore year of college. So I moved in with her shortly after that diagnosis to help her out, to help her get her medicine, to drive her around, to supply some relief from my grandfather, because he drove her absolutely insane. My grandfather really knew how to get under her skin a lot, so I was kind of there as a buffer. I'd take her out to eat, try to encourage her to eat. I helped her cut her hair when it started falling out, and she was amazing. She was amazing through all of this. This is a woman who could be in the biggest pain of her life, and she would still be worried about making you laugh and you feel better because you had a crappy day at school. I cannot over exaggerate her kindness and her empathy and her bad acidness. Like, she's just amazing. However, that time that I moved in with them, I was living there for about 6 months with her going through chemo and on heavy painkillers, morphine, in the morning, at lunch, at night, because it was really bad pain from the chemo and from the spinal tumors that were everywhere. And her and my grandfather started fighting more severely. She got, I'm not even sure if she got delusional or not, because she was convinced that my grandfather wanted to kill her and push her down the stairs, because by this point, she was stuck in a wheelchair. And at that time, I did not know my grandfather well enough to believe her, which I feel like crap about now, but I thought that she was hallucinating from the morphine, because she was on such a high dosage of morphine, and I've been on morphine myself. It made me hallucinate a lot. So I try to quell her fears. I don't think Grandpa would hurt you. I don't, because she was worried that he was going to push her down the stairs. And then they would get into fights and he'd be flipping her off and she'd be chasing him in the wheelchair, kicking at him. And it got to a point where I couldn't. I dropped out of school because it got to the point where she was getting so depressed that I didn't want to leave her alone on school days. So I'd just be like, you know what, I can miss that class, I'll catch up later. Oh, I can miss that class, I'll catch up later. To the point where I could not catch up anymore, and I was too embarrassed to talk to my professors, so I just stopped going. Because all this is after Buddy died. This was after I was raped. And that was a year after I was raped almost annually at that point. I was raped twice in the last year at that point. I had my own PTSD going on. And I was still working at that fast food restaurant. And one of my managers needed a live-in nanny. And my grandma was still really sick. But I moved in with my manager. I quit the fast food place, which you can guess which one it is now. But I quit the fast food place and moved in with my manager and became a nanny for her because the cancer and the dysfunctional fighting, I could not handle it. And I feel like crap about that because there's a part of me that's like, you should have stayed with Grandma. But then a few months after that, she passed away. I did go back to her when that happened. I let my manager know I have to be with my grandmother through this. I was with her in her last car ride to the hospital where we were both smoking cigarettes and laughing. And then I stayed in the hospital for about a week straight. You only shower once every 4 days when you make a trip to the house, brush your teeth, all that stuff. And she was making jokes. And the thing is that she was in so much pain she couldn't move anymore. But she was still making jokes and she was still trying to make us laugh. And I miss her a lot. I still miss her a lot. I still think about her a lot. She is my number one hero and my number one inspiration. I've never met somebody as nice as her or as intelligent as her. And I'm very, very fortunate to have had her in my life. This next story is about my best friend when I was a freshman. So I was about 15 years old, and it was spring. We were going to freshman prom, and I was going with 3 of my girlfriends because we didn't really have any dates or boyfriends. We just kind of wanted to go together as a girl thing. And so that's what we did. And it was at a school. It wasn't at the high school that I went to. It was at a different high school that was public to a church that I went to. Because I had like 2 different communities that I had friends in. Anyway, so this was at the smaller community freshman prom. So we go to prom and, we're awkward teenage girls. So we are just standing around, talking, giggling. And these boys from church were there as well. And I was pretty friendly with the boys at church. I would consider them friends. And one of the boys that I knew brought me punch all night. And I thought that was courteous. I thought that was gentlemanly. I hadn't had the talk about not accepting drinks from boys. And also, like I said, I knew these boys from church. So I wasn't really expecting anything weird. Well, it was later in the night. I can't tell how much later because my memory kind of gets foggy. But it was later in the night and I was feeling very loopy. And before this, I had never had an alcoholic drink. I'd never been drunk. It was right before I started drinking and getting drunk, but I hadn't gotten to that point yet. And I could barely walk. I was wobbling a lot. My legs were kind of giving out below me, and I was giggling at everything. And I felt weird, but I kind of enjoyed the disassociation that was coming along with it. And I had two of the church boys on either side of my arms, both of them holding an arm, and then there was a third church boy who was walking behind me. And they are escorting me out of this school to the sidewalk to take me to a friend's house to hang out in the basement or something. And obviously I am not good judgment at this point. I can barely tell what's going on, so I'm giggling like, yeah, we're gonna have fun. And my best friend sees this, because she followed us out because she could tell that there was something really wrong. First of all, like, I had drifted away from her for whatever reason, and then I was being taken out by these group of men, or boys, or whatever high school aged kids you call them. And she starts calling my parents and calls to those boys, get Alex back here right now. Her stepdad is on his way to pick her up. You need to bring her back. And the boys, knowing that they're going to get the shit kicked out of them if my stepdad finds them trying to do that, they bring me back, leave me with my best friend. Then my stepdad shows up and picks me up. And we don't really talk that much in the car. And I was terrified. I didn't understand what was going on. I didn't know why I felt so silly, because I felt really weird. And like the ability to filter myself was down. And that was really terrifying to me, because I relied heavily on my filter of my emotions and my feelings to not get me into shit at home. So that was a very awkward car ride, and when we got to the house, Ma sits me down and is like, what the hell is wrong with you? Have you been drinking? Are you drunk? And I tried explaining to her, no, I'm not drunk. I just drank the punch. That's all I drank. It's a high school prom. So unless they were putting alcohol in the punch, because why would they do that? It's a high school. Obviously, I'm very naive, and I didn't understand what was going on. I just knew that I felt loopy, and I knew that it was whatever. But if my best friend hadn't seen this shady stuff going on and called my parents and called my stepdad and was like, hey, you need to come pick Alex up, who knows what would have happened in that basement? I have no clue what would have happened in that basement, and I'm happy that I don't have to imagine what would have happened, because my best friend was there to swoop me out of that. So she saved me from potentially horrendous things. And this is the same friend that I talked to about overdosing, where she told me that people loved me and that I need to hang on. This is just one of those people that stick with you through everything. I think lastly, I'll tell you about my sister, and then I'm going to I had this scripted out, but I realized that with how much I have down, if I do everybody, it's going to be a super long video. So I'm going to do a part 2 with childhood heroes about teachers. But anyway, finishing this video, lastly, my older sister, who's 5 years older than me, after she moved out of the house, we actually became a lot closer. And my mother would allow me to stay at her house because she lived in the town where I went to high school, and my mother lived about 20-30 minutes away. So sometimes during the week, it was easier just to go to my sister's house versus going back home. And she provided a literal safe space for me to do homework, to hang out, to be a kid. She had an amazing, amazing boyfriend who also supported me a lot. They kind of gave me a semi-stable foundation for if I was in trouble, I could turn to them. There were times where I would be fighting with my mother and I would call or text my sister, and then she would come over and try to help us and, have really inspiring talks with me and like try to give me the courage to continue on, and that she knows that life is hard living in that house, but it doesn't last forever. She's also encouraged me through those years to be true to myself and to not let anybody else determine that. There's one particular night that comes to mind. I got a call from her boyfriend saying that I needed to come out there. That was after I got my license. Because my older sister had gotten drunk and was walking home and started remembering stuff from childhood and was getting really upset and wanted to talk to the police about it. And the police were just trying to calm her down, and then took her home and said that if she wanted to press charges, she'd have to wait till the morning and think about it and all that. And so I came over to help him a little bit, because he told me, like, Alex, I don't know what to do. I feel like you can help her out right now way more than I can, being her sister. So I go, and she's very emotional because she's having a lot of memories come back to her. And she's a little inebriated. And once I show up, she's just hugging me and crying and telling me that she loves me. And I was very uncomfortable in a way, because any intimacy makes me super uncomfortable. I don't know how to react to it. I don't know how to take it. I don't know how to receive it in the slightest way. So, but I appreciated it. I was so happy that she felt that way, that she wanted to show me intimacy, and she wanted to encourage me to live for myself, and specifically not to live for Mother, and to not live for anybody else but me. And she was a little drunk, but there were some really good truth to her words that helped me. It definitely helped me, hold on to hope for myself, to not fall into the pit of despair, because I had her to talk to, I had her to relate with, and feel the pain of being from that family together. And that really helped me out. And her boyfriend really helped me out. I mean, they both are just really lovely people who are genuinely good people who want to help. So, yeah, that's some stories about some people who mean a lot to me and who helped me out a lot during childhood or through teenagehood, the hardest years of my life by far. Share stories about your childhood heroes. I'd love to hear about them. It's really inspiring to hear about other people's heroes too, because that goodness touches you in a really unique way. So all the stuff for links are at the bottom, and I hope y'all have a good one.